3, 2, 1.
You ready, Bert?
Well, look at this, prima donna!
Welcome back to the Bridging the Gap podcast. I'm your host, Reice Randles. With me today is a very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rick Franks, a fellow comedian. Say hello.
Hey, how we all doing out there?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Glad
sir.
to be here.
Thanks for coming, man. We'll just jump right into it. Obviously, I know you a little bit just from doing comedy and everything, but lay it on the people for the viewer. Where are you from? Who are you? Just give us a rundown.
Well, I was born in Junction City, an Army brat, so
I know you said you used to move around a lot and everything. Where all did you end up moving with being a military brat kind of
a
thing?
bunch of states, different ones. I moved 14 times before I was 17.
Wow.
So when they say, what's your hometown? Well, really, I don't have one, I guess. I lived in Topeka the longest after my dad retired from the Army, so.
For sure. And what was special about Topeka? Was it just because you guys were from Kansas originally?
My mom was from Nortonville, Kansas.
Okay.
You know, he Army guy up here in Topeka chasing women, and then he caught one apparently. So
Okay, and that's usually how it goes.
so yeah, they retired close to her family.
Oh, very nice. So did you guys have like a big family then, like cousins and everything like that? Or
I got a twin brother. He's a very handsome guy.
identical then?
Identical. I'm 8 minutes older. And got a sister a year younger than us.
For sure.
So trooped around the country in the back of a car, traveling base to base with 3 kids, and so.
Were there any notable bases that you ended up staying at for any periods of time, or?
Longest 3 years or 1 to 2 years. So yeah, that's why we moved so much.
For sure. And then obviously you moved back, you said, after he retired. What was your young life like? Have you always done comedy, or was that something that was pretty new?
Oh no, I was that shy, quiet guy in the background. I never spoke. Growing up that lifestyle, you don't talk to a lot of people.
Is that just because you don't think you'll have really the time to get to know them, or?
Well, you'd get to know them and then you'd move. So
For sure.
you kind of always had good friends, but yeah.
It had to be a lot different moving around so much back then, because like nowadays, if I'm moving around, I can still keep in contact with people, you know, like I'm going places all the time, making connections with folks, but it's nothing for me to pull out my smartphone and be like, oh, here's my friend in Oklahoma, here's my friend in Nevada.
Yeah, because somebody asked me about, where'd you go to 5th grade at? Well, man, I have to think hard. Where was I in 5th grade?
For sure.
And I kept in touch with a couple of them, but that I knew over the years growing up, but everybody gets busy with life and you lose contact with them.
100%. So what was like your first job coming out of all that? When you got to be your independence as a young man, what was the first thing you started doing?
Well, helped my dad in his remodeling business. He did concrete and roofing.
Okay, very nice.
I got it out of high school. I was working at McDonald's part-time.
It's so interesting. When I got out of high school, I was a construction worker laborer. And then I had a job at McDonald's as well when I was working at the gym. So similar paths.
Yeah. Well, those jobs like that teach you how to be around people and talk to customers. And
Customer service definitely a big one.
so, yeah, just got in the grocery business after that. I probably could have took over his company at one time, and I said, I don't want to work that hard the rest of my life. So.
I don't blame you there. Did your, go ahead?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and working for a first sergeant, that just retired. He was kind of bossy, yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, so I wanted to get away from that. So I got in the grocery business.
For sure. How long have you done that?
Oh, that was probably most of my life. Yeah, I switched companies a couple of times, so 20 years.
For sure.
Then I worked for the police department, believe it or not.
That's what we spoke about that on briefly. Do you want to explain it for the viewer? What was your role in the police department? Because you weren't an actual officer quite, were you?
I was called a non-sworn officer.
Okay.
Ran the police impound lot. So going from retail to dealing with felons and hit and runs, murders, anything you can think of, and some things you can't. So
Yeah.
it was quite a cultural shock.
I wouldn't doubt it. I managed a Foot Locker there for a while, and I almost got into it with a couple customers, so I can't imagine actually having people who are having some of their worst days come and interact with me. I'm just trying to sell you sneakers, and you're being kind of a dick. So
Yeah, I would. You try to help them out, but they're mad. I understood.
for sure.
I take getting yelled at doesn't bother me, so I'd let them blow off some steam. But and you're still a fucking cop, so they don't like you anyway. But yeah,
very
we
true.
was like, non-sworn. We were like, we act like a cop, look like a cop, but we're not a cop.
For sure.
I couldn't arrest you, but I could have you arrested. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And had people arrested, thrown in jail because they had warrants, and they happened to yell at me too much. So kind of dumb.
Yeah. How often do you think that really happened? Was it just a couple of times, or did people go off on you quite a bit?
Oh, every day.
Yeah.
Most days, yeah, pretty quiet. But yeah, it's a stressful job because you never know what's going to happen that day. So.
I don't doubt it. So naturally, having those kind of like high intensity, stressful jobs, did that lead to you doing comedy as kind of an outlet? What was your progression into starting think you wanted to get on stage? Have you always loved comedy?
Well, a friend of mine talked me into it after I known him 40 years. So.
Okay. Is that your friend with the guitar?
Yeah, Jim McCarter.
Yeah.
He's a singer-songwriter. So he was doing an open mic at K-State.
Okay.
And he said, hey, why don't you put some jokes together and tell jokes at this open mic? And I'm going, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get in front of a crowd. So I got thinking about it and wrote some jokes down and went with them. And so we walked in and he signed up. And I just saw there was like 20.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Go ahead.
We walked in, there was like 20 people in this auditorium, and I said, oh, that's not too bad. So I signed up. And by the time they called me, there was probably 100 to 150 people, and they was broadcasting it over the campus.
Oh, wow.
So when they called my name and I stood up and turned around, I about crap, all these people looking at me.
And what year was that? When was your first open mic?
Oh, that's probably 3 years ago.
Okay, very nice.
Right when the COVID hit. So then they started shutting everything down. So I got out of it for a while.
For sure.
So I'm kind of, I guess I'm a part-time comedian, I guess. So still. Yeah.
Aren't we all? Trust me. Yeah. Through that lens, though, when he invited you to come to the open mic, did he just know you were funny? Did you have interest in telling jokes? Do you just like stand-up comedy at all?
Oh yeah, I always told jokes out that after got working and everything around people. Well, I was that guy that was fun to work with because I just joked all day and kind of lightened up the mood half the time.
For sure, especially working in a stressful environment.
Yeah. So yeah, and then Jim always said, he's the one that said, man, you got to go on stage. This is like 40 years ago. And it's like, man, I couldn't do that. But
for sure.
So I got older and I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try, I tell him it was on my bucket list, but first I have to buy a bucket. So yeah, he's still my, I test my jokes on him. So if he laughs, you always got a couple people you kind of test your jokes on. So
my issue becomes you'll test your jokes out on the people that think you're funny, and then you go and do it for other people, and they're like, oh God.
Yeah.
But I tend to push the envelope, or so I've been told. So I very much like your writing style, though. How do you go about developing your jokes? Do you have a writing process? Do you just throw things at the wall all day?
Just in the course of a day, I meet a lot of people, so I just hear a saying or somebody tells me kind of a half a joke, and then I just work with that, basically.
For sure.
I get stuff pops out of my head. Gets me in trouble sometimes, but it's fun. So.
I mean, you're older and more established now. Do you ever really get in trouble for jokes?
Not really.
No.
I don't really tell too many dirty jokes, and I know, a bunch of them do, but it's just not my style, I guess.
For sure. Well, I think you have a very particular style because you do have the kind of lighter, funnier jokes, but you do get a little dirty every now and again. You allude to some things very well.
Yeah, I suggest things, I guess.
Yeah. How do you find balance in that? Because what the thing I've been told a lot is that I take it a little too far, and that's something I've really been trying to work on.
Well, you probably do different crowds that are used to that, I would guess. It's different
Well, we do the
crowds.
same crowds because we're in
Wow.
speaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, I just found it easier. I was raised a strict Catholic, so
For sure.
I just find it easy. It's like, I don't want to tell dirty jokes. So
Well, that's really more the question. Like I do very much enjoy your comedy. I'm just at the point of where I'm trying to figure out what is determined as dirty. You know what I mean? So where do you draw the line per se? Just from like a knowledge of the game standpoint.
well, just
Obviously, no cursing and things like
Yeah,
that. Well,
curse
what
words.
certain subject material do you tend to avoid? Is it just
well, I try to avoid politics, religion, and sex, basically.
okay?
And that limits you somewhat.
Yeah, that's like 80% of my jokes. Fair enough.
Yeah, but see, your personality's different, so you can say it better, or it's how you convey it to an audience, and
Very true.
you never know how an audience is going to take stuff. But
That's the thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is how I'm being perceived because the way I try to come off as like I think it's just making light of the situation. What I run into a lot is I feel like people think I'm like serious or like they think I like mean something by it that I do not.
yeah, well, I think people pick that up. That's why I was talking to my mom, of course, older, and I tell her I like doing comedy because I can actually lie.
Yeah.
I can be married 3 times. I can be divorced 8 times. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. So
That's interesting that you say that because I have never once questioned anything you've said on stage. I was like, wow, he's been married quite a few times. Like it just comes off so natural.
yeah, been married once, divorced once. So yeah, I got I do a lot of ex-wife jokes. So those
sure.
always seem to. So it's certain categories where you have a little experience. Most people want to hear something they experience in life and make light of it, like you said, or
Very true. Just something, a shared experience we all share.
yeah. We all have things in common. I learned that growing up in army bases all my life. I've met people from all over the world, and we're basically all the same.
Yeah. I had that similar experience when I was going and playing college football and everything like that. How do you pick out the things you're going to bring on stage? Like, what in your mind, what's the go-to thought process for like, okay, I need something that everyone's going to relate to, or do you try to read the room in the moment?
Well, mine's pretty. I write joke sets, of course, and then I just kind of try to blend them in. So it's whatever jokes I think of in the course of a month.
For sure.
I'll tweak them and then practice that set. And if something don't go good, I'll rewrite it or just drop it. So
For sure.
and mine's hard. My jokes don't tie together very well. Like some comedians tell stories that have jokes in it. Mine's just I tell a joke, there's a punchline, and usually a twist to it.
Yeah.
So
That's really why I wanted to have you on because I really enjoy your writing style. I think I'm more on the flip side because I tell a lot of stories and I try to insert jokes here and there. What I enjoy about your comedy though is that there's a setup and punch to everything. It's so straightforward, it's so clean cut. I feel like for like an open mic setting, your style goes over very well because it's so polished, it's so tight. There's no like it's a story, yes, there's a theme to it, but it's also cut and dry. Like this is the setup, this is the punch. I feel like people know when to laugh. Is that something you take into consideration?
yeah, I just like telling a joke, and guess I've done that all my life. Just tell a joke with a punchline.
For sure.
So, and of course, as you know, it's just timing and you got to pause in the right place, and
For sure.
I like jokes where I tell it, and then you can hear the people thinking about it, and then it kind of ripples through the crowd laughing after they get it. So
For sure.
it'll go like left to right, and everybody starts laughing on the left, and then it spreads to the right, and then everybody's clapping or laughing. So
And when it all finally clicks and they
when
get
it
it.
all clicks in their head, what I really said,
For sure.
I yeah, the comedians I grew up with, like George Carlin, Stephen Wright was one of my favorite.
I haven't heard of Stephen Wright. I'll check him out.
You have to check. And his is real twisted too, but
Twisted in the sense of, is it?
Well, I mean, he says something and it totally means something else.
Oh, okay, for sure.
Yeah, it's
A lot of wordplay.
there's a direction, but then he changes it at the end. So
For sure. And that's a route of comedy I'd definitely like to explore more. I feel like I don't have a lot of just quick jokes. I feel like everything I try to do, it takes so long to set up. I really like to try to be a little quicker with it.
yeah,
And maybe just end with some of the longer jokes.
I've been trying to tell stories with jokes in it. So usually real stories that happen.
And so naturally, you've been doing it for a little bit. You've had to have a bomb. It happens to the best of us. Do you have any notable bombs?
And not real. I don't know if I'd call them a bomb. I mean, you tell jokes and hardly, you get that one person that claps.
Yeah.
A pity clap. That's what I call it.
Yeah, I've never much cared for the pity clap.
At least 30 people out there, you get one clap. Well, that's still better than none. But I've never been heckled technically. I mean, I've had a drunk girl ask. Toward my end of my set, she asked me. She stands up and yells out like, "What that joke that you told when you first came on stage?" And I go, "Well, I'm kind of in the middle of something here."
I like it. Very casual.
So and she was a good looking blonde, and I said, "Well, I'd be glad to go over all my jokes after the end of the show with you." So I got the crowd laughing at her.
For sure.
I'm sure she embarrassed herself in the morning when she got sober. I don't know, but I talked to her later. She was just having a bad weekend. So,
For sure.
like I said, some people are good at crowd work, just messing with the crowd.
I am not.
Yeah, I could probably do it, but I don't like to. I mean,
For sure.
I just want to tell my joke. Here's the punchline.
Yeah.
Pretty straight, simple stuff, I guess you could say. But
The thing I've been trying to really focus on as of late is just being digestible, if that makes sense. Is that something you ever take into consideration? Or, I mean, you've always been kind of straightforward and...
my jokes are simple, but they make you think.
Yeah.
So I tell jokes that try to make you think about stuff, so I guess you could say it. So,
More of the wordplay, kind of a clever twist.
like I said, stay away from politics because you might tick off your whole crowd, half the crowd.
My last show at Cosmos, I closed with I have a bit about Trump. It's not even really about Trump. It's about, it builds into like a Second Amendment versus drag queens thing. And it's a whole different joke in there. But the opening to it is, speaking of missed shots, former President Donald J. Trump was almost taken out the other day. And even just off of that line alone, the whole crowd kind of fell flat on me.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard for me to, because I don't take anything seriously. It's hard for me to gauge what people are going to draw offense to.
Well, I guess that's the hazard of being a comedian, but you can't make everybody happy sometimes, just like real life. So
Very true. Do you have any kind of reaction to that? Like, surely you've had a set where, like, okay, they're not feeling me too much. Maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try that. Is there any thought process of, like, how do I pivot to get out of this downslide?
Well, after seeing the audience reaction from other comedians, I might just take off a couple of my jokes, and then I'll add something else to it.
Okay.
You can't really read a crowd. That's the whole thing. Because I've said joke sets at Happy Bassett open mic, and then I do that same set at another place, and just nothing. Half the jokes, nothing. So. Is it the jokes? No, it's just the crowd wasn't into that subject at that night, I guess.
For sure.
So just write good jokes that you think are good or your friends. As long as you don't have friends who think everything you do is hilarious.
For sure. So really it's just about having faith in your material, you think?
Yeah.
For sure.
If you think it's funny, that's what you do. So do the best you can and go home. So. Yeah, what hurts me is it's hard to tie my jokes in together. You can't blend them in to memorize them.
For sure.
So I still got to glance at my notes. And then, like you say, I'm old. Nah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, trying to memorize. We're like, some comedians they have, 5 different stories with jokes. Well, I have 25 to 30 jokes, maybe in a 10-minute set. So that's a lot to memorize for me, or maybe anybody, I don't know.
For sure. The thing I like about your style, because you mentioned that, is like you're talking like a 5-minute set, you may have 20 to 30 jokes.
Oh, probably 10 minutes, 30
Okay.
jokes, yeah. So
So if we chop that in half, so like 5 minutes, probably about 15.
yeah,
Okay. So in a 5 minute set for like the stories I would tell, I may have like 7 to 8 punchlines.
right.
So it's interesting the difference in styles of like you have almost twice the punchlines I do. I think that's why I like your style so much because there's so many punches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because yeah, they listen, you have to listen careful sometimes because it's one joke after the other,
Mm-hmm.
so. And I've been trying to do stories and put some jokes in it,
For
and
sure.
it's worked fairly well.
You have a joke about your mom. She had a bumper sticker that said "I love my Shih Tzu,"
Yeah.
and you should like, it's like she never even took me to the zoo. How does she know it's shit?
That's right. It's like I went to a Shih Tzu and all they had was one little dog there. That's well, my mom that bumper sticker. I said, she has that bumper sticker that says "I love Shih Tzus," and she never had a "I love Rick" bumper sticker when I was growing up. So yeah, this, my mom and dad had great sense of humor. My mom does, my dad does, but yeah, he was always doing practical jokes and would scare the crap out of you growing up.
For sure. So practical jokes is then more like pranks or physical comedy.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
my dad was a storyteller. I mean, he would tell stories wherever he would want. Wherever he was, he would talk to somebody and tell them stories that things we've done and he's done,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm starting to do it. That I'm getting older now. So.
Do you like remember any of his like go-to stories?
Well, there's something about he was fighting with his brother and he climbed a tree. Yeah, so my dad said, "I'm going to burn this tree down." So he took out his matches and caught the tree on fire. So he had stories that were true. I mean, didn't hurt him, but yeah, they'd probably throw you in jail if you did that these days.
I asked because my old man he does the same thing. He was a professional wrestler when I was growing up.
Oh yeah.
So it's just all stories of him being on the road or famous people he's wrestled with. But so once you're around him a certain amount, like obviously he's my dad, I see him more than most people. I've heard the same 8 stories probably a couple hundred times. I really think that had something to do with it shaped my perspective and how I do comedy because it was just so much storytelling. And in pro wrestling, that's all the locker room aspect of guys just sitting around and sharing stories.
Oh yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of jokes and stuff about what they do every day. So
I also think that's why I'm so dirty. Professional wrestling, I like to think of it as like a band of pirates. It's really just all the misfits and alcoholics and everything like that. You really get a shade of every kind of person.
yeah, I can imagine. So
And a lot of the older generation, you guys definitely have like I feel like a heart or a stronger grasp on what it means to commit to things and really just give it what you said to do and actually do it.
yeah.
You think it's a generational thing, or you just think it's particular to like your upbringing?
Well, it's a generation. Younger people to me. Yeah, they're just handed stuff. You know, where I was in that generation where you graduated, you got a job, you bought your own place, got married, so and
Just different expectations.
yeah, here's what you do to be, have a good life,
Okay.
So now there's too much to choose from, I guess. They're always looking for that quick fix to be happy. I'm going to make $1 million. Well, that ain't the goal of life. It's to be happy first. So, because I've had money, I've been broke. So, and if you're not happy with your life and you get a bunch of money, you're still going to be unhappy with your life. Fix that first. So, on comedy, I said I talked to a lot of younger people in their 30s and 40s and listened to their views on politics and life. And then I think back, damn, I'm glad I wore a condom back then.
I don't blame you on that one. That one sounds pretty accurate.
So yeah, that kind of offended a couple guys. But
No, that's a good joke. That is a good joke.
I'll use that next time.
I like that one. Coming from a different generation, how do you react to like the big events of life? You've seen so many historical events. Is there any of the one that like stood out to you, or any that has like a more meaningful value, or something maybe like a historical event that you don't like being joked about or made light of, or anything like that?
No, I kind of take it as it is and
For sure.
try and think of historical event such as is there one you're thinking of?
I did have a couple. Like you seen the AIDS epidemic. Is there anything you take away from that, or like, do you not care for like Magic Johnson jokes because you're like, hey, that's a big deal, or like?
Well, I don't like making fun of sick people, but
Very true.
I mean, I can't say not all the time, but yeah. There again, that follows my don't pick on people, but
I consider everyone older. I'm not sitting here like, oh, you're some geezer. No, I just happen to be in my 20s still.
well, that's like most of the comedians are. I don't even know how old you are. See, I never worried about age. A lot of comedians are younger people, and they don't talk to me very often. I don't know why, but because I'm that old guy, or yeah.
Well, they don't talk to me much either. I think it's just because we're both kind of reserved people.
Yeah, I'm there to do my comedy, and I can't. Usually comedians are up there, and you don't get to talk to them.
I've been trying to get better about that recently. Is just trying to branch out and at least chat with people.
Well, you hate talking right during everybody's up there doing stand-up. So, yeah, you don't have time to do it sometimes. The younger crowd, I forgot what your question was, but yeah. But dealing with younger people, yeah, they got a lot more to deal with, I think. Life ain't never been good. I don't care what year it was. So.
That's an interesting perspective. I'd like to hear you explore that one on stage.
Yeah. It's hard every year, but it's how you deal with it. So.
It does seem like every year there's always some like big fear or something that comes up on. Just to name a few, like there was Ebola, there was COVID, there was like polio, if you want to go really back in the day. Did any of those have any kind of like grand effect on you? Did COVID scare you at all?
Oh, yeah, COVID got scary, I guess. But yeah, when people I knew started dying, well, then you go, wow, that's not good.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of a red flag.
My age group, I guess, there was Vietnam War going on. That was getting over. The Vietnam War ended, and if it would have kept going on for 2 more years, I would have been drafted. So that's how close we got to going to Vietnam. So.
And obviously, with your father being in the military at that time, did you have a different stance as well? Because like you hear a lot about with Vietnam War, like the hippie movement of like in the war and everything like that. Did you strictly oppose those people? Were you always kind of indifferent?
Oh, I couldn't stand the hippie. But I wasn't around them that much. I lived on an army base.
For sure.
Military schools,
You're really like the polar opposite of that argument because you were a military kid in a military family. Yeah. Obviously, you took offense to what they were saying.
Yeah. I thought they were a bunch of spoiled college kids.
Yeah.
Which kind of are now sometimes.
Yeah, the hippie movement definitely hasn't changed much, but...
And what do I care about some 19-year-old telling me what to do,
For sure.
And of course, when I was 19, I knew everything too. I was perfect. So everything I said should have been listened to. Well, you get older, you go, okay, I wasn't thinking right back then, maybe. So
expanding and understanding other perspectives. Do you think that process takes time?
Yeah, I mean, you got to experience life before you have an opinion on it. So.
What about like shocking historical events? Does anything really stand out to you? Maybe like a big sports game or anything like that?
Nah, I never did follow sports. At all.
Okay, what about like when how old were you when JFK got shot?
I'm trying to think of the year he was shot. Yeah, I was born in 58, so I wouldn't have been very old.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, because the reason I bring up the JFK assassination, because I did the math, and I realized you wouldn't have been very old when that happened. Yeah. I feel like you feel the same way about that one as like someone in my generation may feel about like 9/11. Because I was alive for 9/11, but I was a couple months old. It wouldn't have had the same effect on me.
Yeah, I remember 9/11 distinctly.
Where were you?
I was delivering chips at a bar, and they had the TV on, and they cut to the news, and then saw the jet crash into the tower, and I go, that's strange. And I thought it was just some pilot messed up and flew into the tower until the next one did. So then it hits you like, man, they were doing that on purpose. So yeah, it was shocking how many.
It was just like a knee-jerk reaction of fear, or because you come from a military household, so obviously once it was determined that it was an attack, did you have any kind of thought of like, okay, we're going to war again?
Back then, they still didn't know why they did it, who did it. So, then you, like anybody, watch the news and they tell you who did it and why they did it. So. And then we went to war and bombed the crap out of them. So.
Yeah.
Which, that's what the Army, Navy, everybody did their job. So.
For sure. And is that how you look at the military and everything like that? It's just a group of people doing their jobs?
Well, important jobs. Because, they do a lot of stuff goes on, just like at night in Topeka. A lot of stuff goes on. Well, there's stuff goes on in the world you don't want to know about, and they're there to make sure it doesn't happen and get worse. So
Yeah.
So yeah, protectors of the world, or the United States at least. So yeah, love the military. They don't respect anybody that joined the service. So.
And I think that's really the difference in generations is there's so much of like the new technology age or people that are my age. I feel like they have so much access to other perspectives of because you can in this day and age you can see a conflict from every single angle.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like they just focus on the angle that shows their perspective in the correct light. But it's such a multifaceted issue that a lot of times, like, yes, we may not be involved in the most productive way, but in a sense, we're still trying to do the right thing and according to their morals and values. And it's just a clash of morals and values all around, any way you slice it. And it's kind of picking who you want to defend.
Yeah, you're picking a side.
Yeah, and I like to try to stay neutral in those things. Or has it always been the way of people pick a side? Or I feel like your generation was always defaulted to supporting America because that's your country. I feel like nowadays that everyone tries to be correct.
Yeah. Oh, the heck with correct. If you're right, you're right. I just grew up like United States is right. Back then, now, yeah, we're still right. If we wanted to take over a country, we could do it next week.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, let's take Mexico next week. We got the resources to do it. What are they going to do? So, these days, the news is so slanted that you can't trust any of them.
Have you noticed a big shift in that? Because growing up, you had like just news in your generation was a huge deal. It was like the only source of information. But nowadays,
all three channels.
Yeah.
In black and white, but yeah,
they had color back then, didn't they?
Back then they turned it. It finally got color. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, everybody remembers their first color TV. So yeah.
That's something I've never even thought about.
You guys can't comprehend that. Like, yeah, we actually had to dial the phone and everything. So
I have used a spin dial. I have done that one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you'd have to give a manual out to how to do that these days. But yeah, the news back then, they told the news. They didn't have one side or the other. The media now is nothing but, I hate Trump 24 hours a day. They pick their side, boom.
Well, do you feel that in the generation we're speaking of, where it was the colored or the black and white TVs and everything, do you feel it was always speaking of more matter of fact because everyone was on the same page? Like, okay, we're all America and this is what's happening. Whereas now is today, this is like, okay, this is right-wing news. This is what the left is doing. This is left-wing news. This is what the right is doing. Yeah. And they don't really just say what's happening.
Yeah, usually it's...
What changed? Why do you think that change happened?
Same as anything, greed and money. So how do we make more money? Well, let's do this on the news.
For sure.
So the left dominates the news now. So that's what you hear 24 hours a day.
Well, I mean, it really depends on where you tune in. You can go to Fox and...
Yeah, there's not very many channels, but yeah.
It's so interesting that we all have that process of like deciphering the information nowadays. Well, I used to spend summers in Billtown with my grandparents. And they watched the news religiously. Yeah. And as a kid, I never had the thought of like, oh, these people are lying. It's like, no, this is the news. This is just the weather and everything that's going on. It's quickly how fast it changed.
And that's sad. You got to watch something and decipher if it's true or not. Like, again, I live in a black and white world. It's either right or wrong.
And it's really, for you, is it just about maintaining your own moral compass? Last question I had for you, just some advice for the younger crowd. You seem like a very wise guy. I love your comedy. I really thank you for coming, but do you have any notes for us or anything? I liked what you said, though, about just, money doesn't buy happiness. At a certain point, you have to do what makes you happy for you to be fulfilled in your own life.
Yeah. We could win the lottery tomorrow, and if you're unhappy now, you're still going to be unhappy.
I could win the lottery tomorrow, and I'll still be at that Happy Bastard open mic.
Yep. The same thing. You can't buy happiness, but I know a place where you can go.
Happiness is $25 an hour, charity's $40, and Chantel's $35.
That's right. So now it's good to be here, and I appreciate it.
God, I appreciate you coming. I really think it's going to be such a fun episode.
It's like when you said you want to be on a podcast, I had to say, okay, tell me exactly what a podcast is. So.
And it can look so different. It could have been me and you in a room with just a cell phone, but...
I don't know why we're naked right now.
I'm so glad we have video, because some people would believe that. He was like, did he interview that old guy naked? What is Reice doing? From your host, Reice Randles, from our special guest, Rick Franks, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
All right.